Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, and the bin that I want to check in on is right down here. It's the first tray underneath the shelving. It's the system where we've been doing these so-called ping-pong feedings, which is nothing more than just alternating side to side, feeding one side one time, the opposite side the other time. It's not so unique. It's actually the way I'm feeding in a number of my systems, but it's the one system where we kind of pinned it out as being the thing that makes that particular bin different. Although it's not very different. So I'm going to get that thing up onto the bench and we're going to give it a feeding. So let's get to work. The theme for today's feeding appears to be brown because there's coffee, there's potato peels, even the worm shell is kind of brown. The only splash of color is that piece of a cucumber. So hopefully they'll like it. The last feeding would have been indicated to us with the coffee filter, and I could see it already. It's on this side where we last fed. And then too, it was a couple cucumbers that we threw in here. So I'm not expecting after 10 days to see a whole lot of leftovers of that cucumber, but you never know. So now this white powder that you're seeing here, this is hardly powder anymore. It's not been powder for some time now. It's probably just caked on. Yeah, I guess if you had to work it and dry it off a little bit, it would become powder again. But it's the stuff that I'd been combating these flying insects with. You can see once they stumble on this stuff, it gets caught up in their bodies. They can't get free of the junk, and then it prevents them from being able to fly and every other thing that they need to do to get by. And eventually they just expire. So it's those little guys that I've been trying to combat, and I could see a couple of them here and there. One's flying in front of my head, another one over there. So the thing I've been using lately is the Mosquito Dunks solution. So before we get started, I just want to put a shot in here, even though it doesn't seem like the flying insect situation in any of my bins is as chronic as it was, I don't know, say a month ago still, soon after I started using this stuff. It does seem to me like it's having some effect. I still see a flying insect here or there, but it was usually when I would open up my systems, and that's when I'd be encountering them coming out at me. But I'm seeing less and less of that. So now this would be feeding number 13 for this system. Geez, I don't even remember. I just watched the video earlier on the previous feeding from 10 days ago. I thought we had determined that at that time it was 150 some odd days old. So we're looking at a system that might be in the 160s at this point. I didn't really make note of it, and I didn't come down here prepared with any cheat sheet of information. I'm glad that we're only covering with that piece of cardboard, because it is allowing for a little bit of moisture to seep out of the system. In most of my systems, I've been transitioning from the plastic coverings that really hold the moisture in almost perfectly, almost allowing none to escape. Gradually making my way over to what's happening in most of my systems, which is either a paper covering or a cardboard covering, and even in some cases where I'm trying to really promote drying now in the late stages of some of these systems, I'm just leaving the systems uncovered, exposed right to the air. So now, of the last feeding that went down in here, I'm even wondering if this is, yeah, I mean, you know, if you put a couple cucumbers down into a worm bin 10 days later, it's awfully unlikely that you'll find any leftovers of that. And I think other than that, plus this bedding that was put in there fresh last time too, yeah, there's really no signs of that cucumber, and I didn't expect there to be any either. But I always like, I guess out of tradition, want to see how the last feeding that I administered to the system is coming along. And then sometimes even hold off on portioning the next feeding based on what I see. But here, you know, I guess with the flip-flopping of the feeding zones, even if there was a whole bunch of leftovers in there, I'd still feel pretty good about coming over to the opposite side of the system to drop in the next feeding. It does almost seem like you have, I don't know, it's kind of like an interesting visibility into what's happened in past feedings. So like even last time we checked in on this side, we didn't really find many leftovers of the previous feeding, but we did find leftovers of older feedings gone by. There was stems, a whole bunch of stems. One of the stems was, I already have it in my hand here, the stem of a pumpkin. And by the way, I didn't mention what this thing was either. This is a cork that's been making its way through my systems over many years in many systems, gradually appearing to lose some mass and structure at this point after many years. In the first few years, I definitely felt like it was going to go nowhere. But it is interesting how it is gradually deteriorating. So I fished out some sort of really fibrous stem of something that I actually tore in half last week, and I was a little upset that I did that. I would have preferred to have left it as a single piece of material to see how on its own it breaks apart or breaks down. But the theme of what we collected last time and put back down into there was just stems that we found. Pumpkin stems, banana stems, even grape stems, and whatever this thing was. Even a stick. But other than those really old leftovers of feedings gone by, we didn't really see anything else. So I wasn't expecting to find any leftovers other than those. And we had even sort of concentrated them into a single location the last time we came in here so that we'd be able to zero in on them pretty quickly. I just dropped them right there in the center so that I can extract them and we could come right in here and give these little guys their next feeding. Just interesting. It didn't seem to me like there were quite so many worms on the other end of the system where the cucumber had been fed. It seems like there's almost more worms over here on this side. Or maybe I just didn't excavate quite as thoroughly on the other side. Let me just comment on this material, by the way, because sometimes it really doesn't come across so good on the video. Stuff is so flaky and loose and granular, even though it is completely damp and wet. The perfect environment for the worms. And nothing that makes me feel like it's just a big clump of junk that's not going to break down. Everything feels loose and crumbly. Nothing seems like it wants to stick to itself. Everything just breaks apart. So that's really nice. It's what I observed in a couple of my recent systems, but not all. Some of my systems still seem to have like maybe a little bit too much moisture and things just have this tendency to clump up. And to me it just seems like when stuff is in that clumpy mode, really hard little balls developing everywhere, it just seems like whatever's caught up inside those little boulders just has no chance of breaking down. It almost seems like it puts all that stuff on hold, you know, until such a time that things dry out and things flake away and anything caught up inside of a little mud ball can finally get back to being broken down. But that's just what I've sort of observed in a few of my systems. So I'm definitely on a mission to get most of my material looking kind of like this, unless there's some reason for it not to be this way. So I got to grab some bedding to throw in here. The bedding I use, you can see right here, it's shredded paper, shredded cardboard combined with small fragments of leaves. It's definitely a nice mix. It's also slightly dampened, but this batch just seems like it's perhaps not quite as damp as others. But I don't think that's a problem, because even though it doesn't seem like it, I'm pretty sure that those frozen potato peels are going to kick out a little bit of moisture once they begin thawing out. And not to mention there's also that pretty good sized piece of cucumber too, which is almost all liquid as well. So those things look pretty tempting, you know, nice starchy meal in the potato, a nice juicy sweet vegetable like a cucumber, all stuff the wormies are really going to enjoy. I also think they just as much enjoy the bedding too, you know, all that cardboard. So down here within the cardboard and paper shreds mixed with coffee, we're also going to mix in a little bit of worm chow. Hopefully it's something they enjoy. I think it should be. And then I guess we could start coming in with the food, but let's not forget some of these old things. We might as well restore them back down into the active feeding area. And for that matter, since we've got a nice new coffee filter that we're in the process of emptying the contents out of right now, why don't we go ahead and we use this old one that had been the feeding zone indicator previously. Chuck it down here in the feeding area. It should get a whole lot more attention here than any attention that it ever could have gotten out on the surface. Alright, pretty nice feeding. Yeah, you know, 10 days. I think the previous feeding interval had been 15 days between check-ins. But with that pretty small portion they got last time, those 2 little cucumbers, didn't seem like a whole lot, and it seemed like coming back in 10 days would be a pretty good timing, and I think we timed it pretty good. Because I really didn't see a whole lot of anything down there other than those shreds of paper and cardboard, my bedding, my prepared bedding over there. And here too, we added a pretty good amount of it. Probably just as much bedding as we added food. And you know, as long as we're talking about food, I'm going to give them even more of this worm chow. Last time we forgot to add the worm chow down into the feeding area, so what I actually did was I had spread it across the top. Let's give them one more handful of this too. What do you think? Yep, that's what I did. I spread the worm chow last week that I forgot to administer to the regular feeding area. I just spread it out across the top, right beneath the cardboard that was covering things here. And I didn't see a sign of it, so that was kind of the expected result there too, right? Let's check these little wormies out before we cover them up, and then we'll be done. And it's at times like this that I sometimes go and rinse off my hands, or I'll put away some of the supplies that I was using up until now that I know I don't need anymore. So I've actually gone ahead and rinsed off my glove, put my glove away, so I'm gloveless at this point. So I'm a little bit soiled now from positioning our feeding zone indicator to show us where we last fed, and now we're just coming back on with this cardboard top, which I think, you know, it's weird. Somehow in this system it feels like we've graduated from training wheels to maybe without training wheels almost. There's this kind of feeling you get within a bin. Last time I still felt like all this bedding and didn't really feel like it was getting there, and the moisture seemed a little bit out of control. But today, I tell you, the material seems so fine and crumbly, moisture's there, doesn't seem like it's resulting in muddiness, so I'm very, very happy with what's happening here. And even though it's kind of an unremarkable, to me almost uninteresting bin, it is doing quite nicely, and maybe we should do something in here at some point to sort of dress things up, because it just sort of blends in with the rest of the noise around here. But whatever, it's just as important as the rest of my bins, even though some of my other bins have more interesting themes. This one's doing a really nice job. So before I continue discrediting this poor little bin that's been doing such a great job, let's call it a day. Before I go though, let me just really quickly say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. There's also the join button if you want to maybe provide a little bit of financial support to the channel. That's also an option. That's very much appreciated too. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.